to know. What a tremendous night. How many are glad to be here tonight? Listen, we want to thank, I'm gonna wait till y'all finish. I'm gonna go get it. Listen, I want to thank the people who helped put this together, everybody who was part of this event team, because this is phenomenal. This is phenomenal. This is an awesome night, and we are grateful. I want to thank our host, Brother George 2.0, who's been doing us tonight. And I want to thank my sister who set it on fire. I was back there listening to her, Reverend Q English. To my family, my mother's here, my stepfather, my cousin, my brother. I want to thank that tremendous introduction by my lovely, gorgeous wife, Reverend.
Welcome to the Gilchrist Experience. Today's guest, Reverend Michael Walrond of 1 Corinthian Baptist Church. Usually we hear all that vibration in church. Boy. You have to come to Michael Walrond's church. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Good to be here.
You're one of the spiritual brothers where we really can touch out and touch. You know, a regular guy off the pulpit, but when he gets up on the pulpit, look out. I mean, wow. It's an awesome experience coming to church, man. I mean, God, that. You definitely call God. Oh, man.
I appreciate that.
Well,
I appreciate
tell
that.
us what calling brought you to run for Congress.
Wow. I tell people that we know elected officials to be public servants. Mm-hmm. And for me, being a pastor in the community is also being a public servant. And I wanted to expand the notion, expand the model for what a public servant really looks like in so many ways. I think many people are frustrated with career and professional politicians. I think we had this tremendous intersection and crossroads in our community politically where we have to begin to think about the future, think about what the future will look like for this district. Right. And for me, as a pastor, I've always been at the intersection of religion and public policy, faith and social justice. And so running for office is a natural progression into that, where we begin to help in the process of transforming community and empowering people to reimagine their participation in the political process. My running was motivated by members of the congregation who I've engaged with for the past 10 years, and I could hear their frustration. I could hear and see their feelings of hopelessness, especially when it comes to connecting dots in community around the issues that impact the community. And so, I decided to move forward and run and again, present a different model of what an elected official can look like, especially in the 21st century, and one who takes people seriously, who puts people over politics, who puts community over campaigns, and who's about the business of transformation and empowerment. Yeah.
One of the things that you concentrated on that out of the community, only a certain percentage of the people actually vote anyway.
Yeah.
So that's part of the problem.
The 13th Congressional District is 717,000 people. Wow. One of the larger congressional districts. The average size of a congressional district is about 600,000. So you have 717,000 plus, really. And in the last congressional primary in 2012, about 5.8% of the constituency voted.
5.8?
Just under 6%. 43,000 people actually voted. Now, it's easy to look at that number and say, well, people are apathetic. Apathy abounds. But I tell people, as a pastor, as a spiritual leader, apathy is not an originating emotion. It is a reaction to something. And with regard to the election and voting, I think it's a reaction to people feeling as though their voice does not matter, that their vote does not count, that where they feel they've been systematically, I think, disconnected and disengaged and in many ways disempowered from the political process. And people do not see the value in it because they do not believe that what they do will actually make a difference. And so they back away. I cannot begin to tell you how during this campaign I've spoken to so many people in the community who don't trust politicians, who don't trust the political process, and who have relegated it to the realm of dysfunction. And at some point, we have to begin to not just reimagine politics, but begin to connect people back to the process. I remember reading a speech given by Winston Churchill in 1941, the day after Christmas, 1941, and he was addressing the joint houses of Congress. And he said that the key to any democracy is when those in position of authority and those who are called to be public servants trust people. You cannot have a democracy when people are not trusted. And so when you have the kind of, I think, widespread suppression that takes place in our communities, and it's not just about the Tea Party and the Supreme Court suppressing the vote. Suppression takes place in our communities. If you continually have a turnout in your district of 5.8% and you do not participate in increasing that and empowering people, you're participating in voter suppression as well. And so I think that we have to begin to reconnect people to the process again and trust people. And Winston Churchill said that. He said, when you are in a democracy and you're called to be a public servant, you're there to serve the public. He said, woe unto the person who's elected to be a public servant who wants to be a tyrant and run the people. And we have to shift away from this idea that people who are elected officials have this absolute power. Our power, those who are elected officials, power are based on people participation and being held accountable by people, and that's not happening a lot anymore.
Being a pastor, coming into the dirty politics, I mean, you have the arm of God on your side to fight off all this demonic force.
Well, it is challenging. I mean, I was asked the question last night. I was teaching a class, and they said, you know, Pastor, how do you get in this and maintain your independence?
Yeah.
And how do you? And I tell people, you know, for me as a pastor, the beauty about this is that I have an inherent mechanism of accountability.
Okay.
That, like the first congressional representative of this district, Adam Clayton Powell, I pastor, which means that every week I stand in front of people. Whether it's on Tuesday teaching, I'm looking at 500 or 600 people in a Bible study, or on a Sunday morning between 3 services speaking to between 5,300 and 5,500 people every week. Having to stand before people weekly and having to speak before people weekly and having people engage you weekly keeps you accountable. You cannot move from D.C. and go to an office and only come out during election time. I have to see people every week. I have to hear the issues. I have to hear the complaints. I have to hear the frustration. That keeps you grounded in a different way. And it makes you accountable in ways that many of our elected officials are not held accountable. I can speak with confidence that there's no elected official who on a weekly basis has to speak to as many people as I have to. I have to engage as many people as I have to weekly. And that keeps you accountable.
And Graham, you have to come to his church. And the last time he came to convent at 8 o'clock, all right? And then I followed him to First Communion at 11 o'clock, right? You know, 55 people joined the church that day. 55. I mean, just awesome.
You know, we were talking before we came on air. My pastor went through this thing in whether or not he should run for mayor.
Mention your pastor.
And that was one of the concerns.
That's his name?
Yeah, A.R. Bernard.
Yeah.
And in talking, I said, well, whatever decision you make, I'm with you. You know, there were some people in the congregation like, no. You know, Pastor, you know, you won't have time for us. And he said, honestly, he wasn't giving up his call to minister at all. But also realizing as a mayor, it's like a 24-hour a day job. Even more so possibly than being a congressman.
No doubt. Definitely.
And you know, he waited, counseled with a number of people, and then ultimately made his decision. But you know, I understand from dealing with other congresspeople, even my own congressman, you're in Washington about 3 days a week.
3 days a week, yeah.
And you're home for the balance. And just that time, you know, writing, preparing legislation, the votes, having to go different places, you know, where it's going to take you, depending upon what committee you're on. Really, how do you see that impacting your ministry?
Well, I think the one beautiful thing about the church where I serve as pastor is that we have a phenomenal team of people. We have an awesome staff. My wife is actually the executive pastor of the church. called her to that in 2006. And we have a great team. I think that staff and that team that sees the vision, understands the vision, in addition to the church leadership, deacons, trustees, who see the vision and understand what it is that we're trying to accomplish, enables me to be in that position, I think. And I couldn't do it if I didn't have an extremely gifted and talented team who I feel completely comfortable with when I'm not there. And so that's why, without hesitation, I'm confident that the church will continue. One thing I said to those is that I will always make sure, to the best of my ability, that on Tuesday nights I'm there because I have to teach. For me, growing a church is about teaching. If you don't teach, the church is not going to move.
Right.
So I have to be there on Tuesdays to teach. To me, teaching in the middle of the week is even more important than preaching on Sunday, because teaching is where the transformation takes place in the life
People
of the
rave
church.
about that class.
Oh yeah,
I
it's
haven't gotten
unbelievable.
to it yet.
It's unbelievable.
Can I come videotape?
Come on, man. Come
All
on.
right.
Come on.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay,
And on Sundays, of course, I can be there because
Yeah.
it's funny. I remember talking. My wife and I are really good friends with pastors Floyd and Elaine Flake in Queens, and Dr. Flake used to be in Congress.
Yes.
And it's something his wife said that while he was in Congress,
right.
he came home every evening. He was home every evening.
Wow.
Is that right?
Yeah, and so
Wow.
that was amazing to me. But the only way you could do that is because of the close proximity to D.C. and because of getting to D.C. is easy from New York, and so I would always try to make space for me to be home in many ways and serve the district and serve the community. But I think it's a beautiful balance, and there are models for this. You know, I talked about Dr. Flake, of course, the late great Adam Clayton Powell Jr. And you think about the late Bill Gray out of Philadelphia, who rose to the rank of House Majority Whip under President Clinton. And all the while, he was a pastor in Philadelphia, the Bright Hope Baptist Church, the former chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, who's in Congress now, Representative Emmanuel Cleaver, is a pastor in Missouri. And so there are models for this, for clergy engagement, and pastors who are also in Congress. And so this is not new. It definitely won't, it's not the first time, it won't be the last time, I believe. I believe we need more people of conscience and who are committed to social justice in Congress, and who view themselves in many ways as being a voice to speak truth to power, an uncompromised voice in speaking truth to power. And it's easy to speak truth to power and to be, in the words about Shirley Chisholm, to be unbought when you feel committed not only to community, but you have a community who keeps you grounded. And that is what I have in 1 Corinthians. And then on top of all of that, if I get out of order, my mother will let me know.
Well, thank God, thank God. You know, I was talking. I was talking with a lady earlier today, and she said, "Why is it that the people who are truly qualified are not stepping into the positions of leadership in this country?" And even biblically speaking, the prophets always advise the king, and we don't have that really anymore. So for someone such as yourself to step into that area, a lot of people say, it's corrupt. It's this. All of life is corrupt.
You better believe it.
There's no place you can go, and if you show up there, it will become corrupt. But to bring that essence into that arena, and to join others of like-mindedness, to strengthen them. But how is the baton passed? Is there a means for passing the baton politically in our communities? It seems that people come in and they stay forever.
Yeah, I wish there was a mechanism. And as you said, it's not just in politics. It is in so many other spheres in our community. We don't always train up the next generation. We don't always equip and prepare those who will come after us. Sometimes we talk.
Is the problem how we treat each other?
Well, I think that. I think sometimes we get worried about legacy, and we want to make sure we're not forgotten. But the surefire way to build a legacy is by investing in other people and investing in the next generation. Now, here's the thing for me. Other than my wife, the pastoral staff at the church, no one is over 30.
Wow.
No one is. All the full-time pastors are all 30 and under. Why? Because I've always committed myself to helping the next generation of clergy and give opportunities and give tremendous responsibilities to young people. That doesn't change, you know, whether I'm at the church or in Congress. It is developing the next generation. I think if you do a great job, whatever you do, whether it's pastoring or an elected official, that if you do your work effectively, in many ways, you work yourself out of necessity, right? You create a space, an opportunity for the next generation to come, and you do it and you hand it on. And that way, you'll be honored and revered as someone who invested in other people. I think sometimes change is hard. As a pastor, I know that firsthand. I mean, if there's any place where there's resistance to change and transformation, it's church. You know, the words that are a death sentence to thriving ministries are, you know, pastor, we've always done it this way. I mean, that is destructive. Those words are destructive. And at the church, you don't hear those words, primarily because, one, we call ourselves an ever-evolving community of visionaries and dreamers, that ever-evolving. So what we do intentionally with regard to the staff is every 3 years, we go through a reinvention process. Every 3 years in church, we begin to reimagine ourselves so that we don't get stale, we don't get stuck, and we stay relevant, so that we are always evolving and learning and growing. So that you will never hear someone say, we've always done it that way. No, because we change in every 3 years. That's important for me.
You know what I want to do? I want to run this second piece, the second roll in, where you talk about who reached back and helped you when you were a youngster. And what you're doing for young people today. Let's run the second clip and we'll come right back to you. All right?
My heart. I called someone whose influence in my life has been tremendous. About 29 years ago, I was in a program called Operation Alternative. That program was designed to be for at-risk youth, to set them on the right track. And I had a mentor in this program. I called him this morning. His name is Reverend Gregory Groover. I called him this morning. I hadn't spoken to him in a while. I said, Greg, I just want to tell you thank you. Thank you. Years ago, you saw something in me that I did not see in myself. When I did not think college was a possibility, when I did not think that there was much that could amount to me, when I was content believing that I would just be one of those guys hanging on the corner, hanging in the park, he saw something. He pushed me. He told me how great I could be. He told me what he saw in me. He said, do not water down your gifts. Do not be ashamed of what is inside of you, because what is inside of you, he told me 29 years ago, he said, it will change the world. If you let it, it will change the world. And so I called him this morning to say thank you. But I did that because I realized I stand here tonight because someone believed in me. Someone believed in who I could be. Someone believed in what I could do. Somebody believed in the potential and the power that was inside of me. Somebody believed. And tragically, when you look across the landscape of our country today, and especially in our body politic, we have a lot of people who appear to stop believing in people. We have leaders who stop believing in people. We have elected officials who stop believing in people, and it is evident because too many elected officials put politics over people and campaigns over community. They've forgotten that we are called to be public servants. 1941, Winston Churchill, when he was addressing the joint houses of Congress, he said, the key to democracy is learning the art of trusting people. Serving. You cannot serve the state or the public if you do not believe in people and trust people. And unfortunately, we now are in the midst of a political process that does not believe in people, does not trust people. Why? Because they do not take the time to empower people to learn how to connect to the process that will enable their own transformation and empowerment. We are part of the 13th Congressional District. 717,000 strong. And yet in 2012 congressional primary, only 43,000 people voted. 6% of the residents of this district voted. And now you can say it is apathy, but apathy is not an originating emotion. It comes from somewhere. It is birthed from somewhere. And I am convinced that it is birthed by those who have participated in the systematic disempowerment of people. Because as long as the voter pool stays small, the same people get elected year after year after year. And so the key to bringing about change in this district and in this country is by engaging and activating our capacity to vote. You do not talk about how change is needed. You do not talk about what has to be done. Because I've been to too many forums where we have engaged.
Now,
Cut us off.
the most important part, what we're talking about, getting folks under 30 to vote. Your congregation is definitely going to be out there. All right?
Yeah,
So, I mean, you inspire, but what I really want to talk about is this person that reached back to you 29 years ago.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, I grew up really in two towns. I grew up in two towns on Long Island, Roosevelt and Freeport.
Oh, Roosevelt, know it well.
Yeah, I grew up in Roosevelt.
Dr. J.
Yeah, Dr. J, that's right.
Man.
So many, Eddie Murphy, I mean, you could,
Eddie
Howard
Murphy, right.
Stern. I mean, Roosevelt, 1 square mile, but produced so many people in the arts and even so many people in ministry. It's amazing how many friends I grew up with as children who are now in ministry. But I grew up in Roosevelt, transferred from Roosevelt schools, and ended up going to Freeport, graduated from Freeport High School. But when I was in high school, there was a program for at-risk youth, and it was called Operation Alternative. It's amazing. The woman who was one of the program directors, she passed away December 31st, New Year's Eve. She was the mother of Flavor Flav, right? Anna Drayton, and had a tremendous impact on me as well. But there was a young man there who was working there at the time, young man named Gregory Groover, who ended up being my mentor in this program for at-risk youth, Operation Alternative. And he really, at 14 years old, he would tell me things it made no sense to me, right? He would tell me how, God had a special calling in my life. I didn't know how to process that at 14. Or he would say that, there are things in you that you are gifted and that you are very strong, brother, and you can't be afraid of your strength. He would say these things to a 14-year-old. I couldn't understand it, but he saw something. He saw it, and he stayed with me. For 4 years, this brother invested in me, spoke life into me, and even when I was not even thinking about going to college, he kind of pushed me to apply and take the SATs. But I had already assumed I couldn't get into college. But he was a Morehouse graduate.
All right.
And he had a friend who was the head of the admissions department at the time. And he wrote this stellar recommendation for me. He told, basically in a letter, he said that Morehouse needed to give me a chance, that I would be the kind of young man who would make Morehouse proud. I tell people, I got into Morehouse on a hookup, man, because the other schools I applied to, I did not get into. And I got into Morehouse College, and when I got to Morehouse, everything in my life changed. A whole different world opened up for me. And not only did I have this brother who spoke life into me for 4 years, but when I got on Morehouse College campus, I felt like I was every day in the presence of a spirit of greatness on the campus.
Absolutely.
Wow.
When you stand there and you see the statue of Martin Luther King, and you hear the legacy of great Morehouse men who have gone on, I mean, you had no choice but to feel that you were walking in the midst of greatness. And, Morehouse is this thing that Howard Washington Thurman said, that Morehouse places a crown above the head of every Morehouse man that we seek to grow tall enough to wear. And when we go through those halls, we're always seeking to grow tall enough to wear that crown that Morehouse places above your head. So that mentor I had, Gregory Groover, who's actually a pastor now in Boston, Massachusetts, he literally, God literally used him to change my life, used him to change my life in a meaningful way. And I know that he's one of those persons that God sent my way to push me in a different path. And it was a path that led me to where I am right now. And so that day that in the video, the clip you saw, was the day I announced my candidacy. Right. And that day, it was a very emotional day for me. Of course. And I called him and I thanked him from the bottom of my heart, because I wouldn't have been where I was and where I am now as a man, as a father, as a pastor, as a husband. I wouldn't be where I am if it were not for people like that, in him in particular. I never forget that program. I was in an operational alternative. Took some of us, got us suits at 14, and took us up to the caucus weekend in Albany. So my first time going with at 14 years old, and I saw, like, learned about what politics was, and they told us on the van going up there, talked to us about what it meant, and on the way coming back, and I had not been back until this year at 42 as a candidate for Congress. So it was just, it felt like I came full circle this year, and it's just a tremendous thing. And you know, at Morehouse, where so many things happened, I met my wife at Morehouse, and we actually, believe it or not, we had a child while we were in college, my son, and our junior year of college, our son lived on campus between my dorm and my wife's dorm at Spelman.
Wow.
And because I was committed, my wife's mother was watching our son for the first month or so of school, and I felt, you know, at 19 years, 20 years old, I felt like I had to take care of my son. I felt like less than a man, because I was thankful that my wife's mother was taking care of my son, but I wanted to do it. So I remember going to the dean of students at Morehouse and asking, was there any policy against having a child on campus? And there was no policy. And he said, you need to ask the resident director, you had to ask your resident advisor, and nobody was against it. And my roommate was cool with it. And so I brought my son in September, my junior year, on campus, and he stayed between my dorm room and my wife's dorm room, who was my girlfriend at the time. And I had this portable crib I would be carrying across campus to Spelman, and she'd be bringing it back from Spelman across from Morehouse. Wow. And the beauty about that is, you know, 22 years later, my son next month is graduating from Morehouse. And my daughter is a sophomore at Spelman.
My goddaughter. And I want to say congratulations to Shia Cobb, who's from the projects right here on St. Nicholas Avenue and 127th. She's living in Maryland now, but she was accepted to Spelman.
Wow, wow.
Very tragic conditions that she was living under here in New York. Her mother has since passed, and a lot of family problems, but her aunt took her to Maryland to live. And over the last 4 or 5 years, she's blossomed into a wonderful young lady.
Wow.
She sent out her application. She got nothing back. She was depressed. And last week, she came home. There was a package.
Wow.
And she texted me a picture of the letter from Spelman.
Oh, wow.
And 3 days later, she got an acceptance letter from Howard University.
Wow.
When it rains, it pours.
This wonderful, loving young lady, you know, like yourself. We have to pour into our young people.
Oh, God, yes. Yes.
And that's part of passing the baton, you know. I remember Alma John, who mentored me, and that's how I wound up getting into broadcasting. You know, all of the people, none of us get here by ourselves.
No.
And God, I believe, He's giving us, I remember one of my old pastors said, we don't own anything.
That's right.
We are just the trustees. It's stewardship.
Yeah, it is.
God gives you something so that you can give it away to somebody else.
That's right.
It's not for you to keep.
Yeah.
So just like Lazarus and Dives, God gave to Dives, but Dives thought it was all for him.
That's right.
And look where he wound up.
Well,
you know.
I mean, it is true that we have to begin to pour in. I mean, you made a comment about the congregation. So I came to 1 Corinthians 10 years ago. There were about 300 members at the time. Right. You know, I'll be celebrating 10 years this year, and to see what has happened, what God has done, that congregation is now over 9,000 in 10 years.
How many?
Over 9,000.
9,000.
In 10 years, and the largest demographic is between 19 and 41.
Yeah.
So young people are in there, and for me,
you see a lot of hardheads in there too.
Oh no, it's because
Bubba's in the church.
No, it's because this is who we are. I mean, I didn't plan on pastoring when I was going through graduate school, but and part of the reason I didn't want to pastor is because I didn't think I had the tolerance for pastoring. And when I started pastoring, I wanted to pastor the kind of congregation that would have caught my attention at 15, 16. And I started pastoring at 25 years old in North Carolina. And I wanted to create an environment where people could have an encounter with God and did not feel ridiculed, did not feel judged, but more importantly, a space where young people felt like I can encounter God. And so part of my calling has always been ministering with young people. And so at this congregation now, First Corinthian, I mean, young people are a large part of that congregation. And then 2 years ago, we built a Dream Center 2-3 blocks north of the church, which is multi-generational, but a heavy emphasis on empowering young people. We tell people to, live big and dream bold, right? Yeah. And we focus on 3 areas: arts, leadership development, entrepreneurial development.
Great.
One, because we felt that in the community, arts was being taken out of the schools with these cuts.
Yeah.
And we wanted to help develop the next generation of leaders and to give these skills, entrepreneurship skills, so people, so our young people don't always think that my whole life is driven towards empowering and enriching someone else, but to learn how to now be creators. I mean, I'm big on arts, but I'm big on creativity. Like I said, our congregation, we call ourselves an ever-evolving community of visionaries and dreamers, that you have to be able to dream. Part of my running is about pursuing dream and vision, and I can't tell people to pursue their dreams and be empowered by their visions and not live it myself. And so even our theme for this year, where we say that the theme, and we have these bands that people wear that say, I'm the embodiment of infinite possibilities.
Oh, yes.
And that's what I believe, that each of us embody infinite possibilities. And so much of life for so many of our people, and young people in particular, is rebelling against false ceilings that have been placed above our possibilities. And many of our young people who I've encountered on the streets have internalized what has been said to them, and have internalized the negativity. And therefore, they begin to not see the possibilities that can abound for their own lives. And I always feel a sacred calling to help people see the depth that lies within and the inherent greatness. And so many people go chasing greatness and trying to be great. And the most amazing thing about who we are as human beings is that we go chasing something that we already are. Right? We go pursuing something we already are. That the call in life for me is not to be the greatest pastor, not to be the greatest congressman, not to be the greatest Christian, but my highest calling is to be the best human being I can be.
Amen.
And being a great human being, to live in authenticity and genuineness means that I affirm the inherent dignity of other human beings. It means that I affirm the dignity of all people. That is the greatest call of human beings, to affirm the dignity of another human being and engage in life-enhancing work that gives life and gives birth to life. And I think that's what it's about. And even in the political sphere, when you hear people say, well, politics is dirty, or politics is corrupt, and I have discovered that it is so. But I tell people that you cannot relegate those spaces to the corruption.
Thank you.
That at some point you have to reimagine it being transformed. And that's why I believe a lot of people stay away, as you said earlier, because they feel like it's so corrupt. But if the people who could be great leaders all take that attitude, nothing changes in our country.
Right.
Nothing shifts in our country. And so people of conscience, people who I say are freedom fighters, people who understand that they are the ones they've been waiting for, people who understand that they have to be the change they want to see, those are the people who need to be running for office as well, so that they can begin to push people to see what is possible for their own lives.
When people have good leadership, their lives are enhanced.
Oh, yeah.
I was just thinking of Joseph, who rose to be Pharaoh of Egypt.
Yeah.
Not something he was looking for, but God put him in that path because ultimately it was to save the lives of other people.
Yeah.
And we have dunamis and exousia. We have power and authority. And oftentimes the problem is the proper use of the two.
Right.
But as you were saying, to enable people, and you mentioned Dr. Howard Thurman, love him. Jesus and the Disinherited. Oh, that section on fear. And just how the system is the one that's traumatizing the poor. The people that are supposed to be assisting people up are the ones that are pushing them down and beating them in the dark and doing all sorts of psychological damage to them. You were going to say something?
I was going to bring the present pharaoh up for
The present pharaoh.
our president. I have a role in him talking about voting, and I went to President Congressman Walrond give us an idea what it was like to meet the president after we watched this clip. All right.
Yeah.
So it's our president talking about us voting and how important that is.
It's been led by the Republican Party. Is to see my own life and the progression that's happened. You think about Brown versus Board of Education and the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act and Freedom Summer. And with those anniversaries, we have new reason to remember those who made it possible for us to be here. Like the 3 civil rights workers in Mississippi, 2 white, 1 black, who were murdered 50 years ago as they tried to help their fellow citizens register to vote. James Chaney and Andrew Goodman and Michael Schwerner believed so strongly that change was possible, they were willing to lay down their lives for it. The least you can do is take them up on the gift that they have given you. Go out there and vote. You can make a change. You do have the power. I've run my last election, but I need you to make sure that the changes that we've started continue for decades to come. Thank you. God bless you. God bless America.
No, I always say, to me, now I'll be 73 next week. So this man is a gift from God for me, because I'm the same age. Emmett Till would have been 73.
Wow.
All right? So I go back to the old racism. I mean, it was really heavy back in those days. But I was in New York, so I was fortunate. But just seeing a black man in that position, and you're a youngster, I mean, in comparison, to strive, what does it feel like to see a brother in his position? And what is it like up close?
Yeah, I mean, I've had the pleasure of meeting the president on 2 occasions, but I also had the pleasure of meeting Senator Obama when he was running for president. He came to New York at BMCC.
Yeah.
You know, I have my own story about the voting, when I came through Morehouse in the late 80s, it was like the rise of the black nationalism again. You know, we were, walking around campus, listening to Public Enemy and Fight the Power.
Fight the Power.
Yeah.
And many of us who were there reading a lot of militant writings, and it's amazing. The term Black Power was coined, if you look in the history books, by a man by the name of Willie Ricks. All right. Willie Ricks changed his name, and when he kind of got older, he was on Morehouse College campus almost every day, and he was like teaching young brothers about about Black Power and the movement and the Civil Rights movement, and so many of us were kind of this, we were like these new generation of black radicals, right? And it's amazing because we became frustrated with the system, and we thought it was rigged against, people of color in this country. And so we thought, we thought that the way to change was by empowering people and by working like the work of the Black Panthers, lifting communities and transforming communities and helping young people. And so that's what I thought for a long time. And I was disillusioned myself with the political process, sporadically voted, then engaged in. I'm gonna be honest with you, what changed me in becoming this kind of vigilant person when it came to voting was President Barack Obama. And I'll tell you why. Because I remember being one of those people who made this comment, in 2008, 2007, 2008. I said, they will never let him be president.
Okay.
I mean, so many people made that kind of comment.
Yeah, of course.
And, the myth, the kind of mist and vapor that we say, they will never let him be president. And what I saw because everybody knew the numbers were not there. There's no way he could win. And what I saw that campaign do is do what many campaigns had not done, and that was work on the grassroots level.
Yeah.
Empower people, cast a vision, generate a narrative that people could believe in. And I remember meeting him, and after the meeting, when he was running, I believed and said to myself, I believe he can win. And then when I went to a rally at the Meadowlands in Jersey, I was invited to go, and the crowd was majority white. And I saw the energy and the passion and the excitement. And here I saw a unifying figure standing at the podium. I said, this brother's gonna win. But it was the way the campaign worked. It was against the grain. It was antithetical to the normal process of running campaigns. And he connected people back again. He gave people a reason to believe again. And I was one of those persons. And when he won the Democratic nomination against the odds, I said, there's power in voting. It is really powerful. If we grab it, it can happen. And his campaign changed my way of thinking. And I began to really teach even more about it and teach more about how we have to engage the process. And I started seeing how, the old saying, politics is local. And I started seeing people have frustrations in the community that could actually be resolved by voting for their local official.
Absolutely.
And getting involved. And I was pushing that and have been pushing that. And so I know what it is to be that young person on this side of it saying, this is a waste of time. And then I know what it is to then be on the other side saying, hey, this is a powerful tool. It is the least expensive tool we have for change because it's free, it's voting. And it led me in 2012 to work with National Action Network to lead. I led, along with Reverend Sharpton, the voter engagement tour. We went around educating people in key states about their rights and the voter suppression attempts. And I saw how this thing could really make a difference. And the same thing came again in 2012, where they thought he would not win again. They thought the numbers did not pan out. But when you connect to people, and when you speak to people, and when you engage people, people are the unknown, I think the unseen factor in politics. Even though it's supposed to always be about people, we overlook people. That's why even when you think about campaigns now, it's about who endorses you, what big backing you have.
Doesn't mean a thing.
Doesn't mean anything if the people are not out there to vote. And so I think that's the critical piece, and that's what I'm learning even in this campaign.
When I met the president in 2007 at a fundraiser in Brooklyn, and got a chance to sit and talk with him. But the first time I saw him speak at the Democratic convention,
204.
We were all, who is this guy? It was like, he should be running for president. And prophetically, 4 years later, he did. I remember Inauguration Day in Washington.
It was cold.
Bitter cold. But, we got out there before 6 in the morning.
Yes, sir.
And we stayed out there. But one thing I noticed, and I said to my wife, I said, we didn't elect him. They elected him. They're
going to put a number up and see if we can't get some callers.
Right.
Because I looking around at the crowd, they had the jumbotrons, and every time he appeared on camera, that's what you heard. Nothing other than the wind. Babies stopped crying. But to see how white America has shifted, the paradigm shift in this country, not that racism is gone, it'll never be gone, but the paradigm shift for people, that word hope that he gave, hope, to cause people to say, forget about the power elite, forget about the lady with the silver spoon in her mouth, and the fact that her husband was president, forget about all of that. We're going in this direction.
That's right.
And
twice they did.
Twice. So that also gives hope to the country.
Yes, sir.
Because when we were growing up, I remember sitting and watching Bull Connor and Lester Maddox and
Fun days.
The troops marching the children into school. I remember those days. You know, my grandfather never learned to write or vote in his life. And to be alive and see this come to fruition. Any little black boy or girl should be aspiring. He raised the bar so high for everybody. For everybody. Forget about race. He raised the bar so high for everybody. Anybody coming behind him now has something to strive for. You know?
You know, it's amazing when you talk about, when I hear you all talk about your experience growing up and what you saw, the living segregation, you know.
Yeah, really.
And I think about my experience, you know, I was born in '71, but think about this. There are young people right now, you know, 6, 7, children, 8, who all they know is a black president.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all they know.
Yeah.
They have no other idea of a president other than this African-American man. Can you imagine what that births in so many young people?
Wow.
The most powerful human being on the planet right now is a black man.
And look what a great job he's
Oh
doing.
man, in spite of all the obstructions.
Right,
I mean, that and I think about as a child growing up in elementary school when in the classroom above the chalkboard you saw the pictures of all the presidents going around and never seeing anyone who looked like me.
Yeah.
Now there are children in kindergarten who when they see that picture in the school of the president, and they actually looks like them, some young African-American boy or girl or a person of color in this country, Latino, who can see a person of color who's the leader of this country. I mean, so it's hopeful. It's
and they can
tremendous.
pronounce his name properly.
And can pronounce his name properly.
But then again, you come and see youngsters showing their drawers. I mean,
well, I think
such a contrast.
Well, I think that
to the old days when we did nothing but dress up.
Oh yeah, but I think in many ways that we have to begin to speak, as you said earlier, to speak life into young people.
Okay.
I think the easiest thing to do is to be critical. The easiest thing to do is to label and judge. We do that, people do that well in church, right? But I think it takes courage and strength to see a young person who you feel is going down the wrong path and engage them in life-giving ways. That takes courage and strength.
Yeah.
And that means that you already, in engaging that young person who you may see going down the wrong path, that means that you engage because you believe in what is possible, or else you wouldn't be doing it. I think that hope, that faith, that belief can become infectious.
Yeah.
And I think if it becomes even more infectious, you have no idea what it can give birth to in our communities across. And I'm running for Congress in a district that is about 55% Latino, about 27% African American, about 12% white, about maybe 4% Asian, some undeclared. But think about it, you have so many different young people of diverse backgrounds. And I think this is a moment historically where you need the kind of galvanizing figure who can mobilize people around shared vision and shared hope and shared aspirations. And I think that's what for me, this election is about. It's not just about whether you can get another politician in office. The issue is, can you get a great leader, someone who's a leader in office, who can transcend the stifling boundaries that have inhibited so many people and begin to cast a new vision of empowerment for the community as a whole. And that's what we hope to do.
We have 2 callers there. Let's see what you have to say.
Hello.
We only have a few minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hello.
Yes,
Yes.
go ahead, sir.
Yes, I want to talk to the minister. Aren't you embarrassed to talk about having a child out of wedlock? Don't you see the poison in the black community is exactly what you went through? And you had a mentor, and you had the gall to go ahead and have a child out of wedlock.
Is
You
that
have
right?
them on welfare?
Yeah,
I thought we were going to screen these calls.
No, I love that question, because one thing I realize in my own personal life is that you never avoid ignorance. And so you always speak truth to ignorance. There is no one who could ever make me feel ashamed of my son that I had at 19 years old. And let me just be clear that young people or out of wedlock births is not a new thing in this community. It does not define you. Now, what the caller failed to say when he focused on me having a child of wedlock, what he failed to also say is that I raised that child on a college campus, that I graduated from college with that child, that my wife and I got married after graduation, that my wife now has 3 masters and a PhD. I went on to Duke University after that. So it's amazing how we harbor on one part of the story but don't look at the complete story.
And your son is?
And my son is about to graduate from Morehouse College. So if anyone wants to talk about, if that is a model, it could actually be a great model of what it means to not surrender to the statistics, but to transcend even ignorance and people's own definitions and expectations and begin to show a different way and a different path.
You know,
so I actually, those kinds of calls empower me.
Long Island,
Amen.
Long Island had the highest abortion rates in the country for many years. So who are the people killing their children? Who are the people masking virginity and killing off their children?
If you think about this, right? So think about the catch-22 from many people on the right, whether it's political right or religious right, that we would chastise persons who have children out of wedlock, and then chastise persons for having abortions. There's an inconsistency there.
Yeah, right.
And it's amazing though how many on the right are critical of persons who have abortions and are anti-abortion. And I remember years ago looking at this, and it's amazing how there are people who only care about life inside the womb.
Right.
But don't think about the life of the child when they come out. So at the same time, as though you care about life in the womb, but then you support cutting programs that help take care of children outside of the womb. So that's amazing. But no, those kinds of calls I think are inspirational because for me, life is not about living in this box of perfection.
Thank you.
It's about learning how in the midst of mistakes, how to transcend and turn what some people could think as a tragedy into a triumphant moment.
Amen.
And so, yeah, but I am well versed in dealing with ignorance.
Touche. I learned something today. This next caller. Anything bright to say? Can we have a bright question? Next caller, please. Hello?
Speak up, please.
Yes, hello?
Yes, you have to speak up.
Hello?
Can hear you.
Yes, yes. Brother, don't say that fool.
We
Can
can't
barely hear you.
I guess he didn't.
Can't hear you.
Turn off your television. Turn down the television and speak up, please. Is he still there?
Yes, he might have disappeared.
We have somebody on the phone.
We can't hear the caller.
Bev? Who's handling the phones? All right, let's go on. We only got.
We can't hear him.
Okay, I know. It turned up. We have to turn it down.
Okay.
Hold on, please. They're trying to rectify it.
We only have a few more minutes anyway. We have 3 minutes left. So hopefully we. I love this last answer. Man. On the money. See,
My mother was born out of wedlock. You know.
That
was in the 1920s when.
My father was born out of wedlock, and my father went on.
Jesse Jackson was born out of wedlock. There's so many people you could name: white, black, Asian, Latino, whatever.
It's difficult to be born
everywhere.
black and survive. You know.
It's everywhere.
But part of the problem is that there are a lot of people who would hear the words of the last caller and allow those words to become definitive.
Right.
Yeah.
They don't define you. For me, I'm defined by a few things. One, my faith in God, and also family and love and things like that.
Right.
And so I think what happens in our country is that, one, they try to lump people, especially African American people, as though we're one monolithic blob, right? So that we are only singular in our understanding and manifestations of who we are, and that is not the case. And I think the real thing is not to have the capacity to be judgmental or ridicule. It is to have the capacity to lift and enhance. You know, you quoted scripture earlier. There's that powerful scripture seen in the Gospels where they bring to Jesus the woman caught in adultery. And many people in the church who are hypercritical, I always say they clearly did not read this story, because when they came to Jesus and said that the law says that such a person as this woman should be stoned, and Jesus did not focus on her issue with them. In fact, in their presence, Jesus does not condemn her. No. He simply shifts the qualifications for being a stone thrower. He says that if you are without sin, then you can cast a stone. And it said they all walked away from the oldest to the youngest, and they dropped the stones. And I think it's amazing how judgmental and critical we are, as though we hold judgment and make judgment against people from a place of perfection. That is not the case. No. Our own personal struggles, our own individual proclivities ought to give birth to a sympathy that understands everyone's issues and wrestling with issues. That's what I do as a pastor. Right. I understand that we all navigate issues that sometimes we're not proud of. There are things about us we're not always proud of. Right. But the issue is not whether we have those issues. The thing is not whether we have made mistakes. The issue is how do we bounce back? How do we move forward? How do we learn? How do we grow? And that enhances life in many ways. And so, yeah, I think that it is not the mistakes in life that really define us. It is how we come back and react. Howard Thurman once said a quote that I've been carrying with me, I think, since Morehouse College days. He said, "The contradictions of life are not final." The contradictions of life are not final. Today's no can be tomorrow's yes. And so that's how we engage. That's how I look at life.
Well, this has been my pleasure. I mean, thank you, Reverend Walrond.
No, thank you for having me, man.
This is quite an eye-opener. You know? But you have to come to First Corinthian Church on Sundays, man. I mean, it'll light you up, boy. You just come in there and it just lift you up. And thank you for coming to the Gilchrist Experience. The God in me loves the God in you. Take care. God bless.
As a teacher,
Tuesday class.
people say to me, I had a